Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another English with Joseph. Well, as you'll probably hear from the cars passing on the street outside, things are relatively back to normal. This is the last day of COVID regulations, and I think it's from tomorrow everything will be perfectly fine again. Everything will be relaxed. Although masks are staying by personal choice. You can decide if you want to wear a mask, and some shops may also insist. But apart from that, everything should be fine, although there's kind of a contradiction. On one hand, I'm hearing, yep, everything is fine, regulations are relaxed. But on the other hand, I'm hearing, be very careful because there's the Delta variant sweeping through the country. And I'm not really sure what to believe, but certainly all regulations are being removed from today and everything should be back to normal. Now, in today's little podcast, we always talk about unusual things. We're going to talk about a relic from the days of the British Empire, a very old relic, and I'm not talking about the Queen. I'm actually talking about the BBC. We're going to be talking a little bit about its history and also what impact it really has on us today. Well, let me first of all define what the BBC is and what it's not, because this seems to be a very confusing subject amongst English learners. So let's say first of all what the BBC isn't. The BBC is not Britain's state broadcaster. Okay, it's not funded by the government. It was, I think, in its early days, but it hasn't been for some time. It's not managed by the government anymore. There's a board, a special committee, which manages the BBC. And that committee has, I think, one or two government members on it, people from the private sector, other people from the media industry, and of course, people employed by the BBC. So it's not actually run by the government, and therefore the government does not and cannot use it as some tool for spreading propaganda or whatever. Now, that's not to say that the government doesn't use all of our media to spread propaganda. I wouldn't like to say whether it does or whether it doesn't. I certainly have my personal views on that. But what I would say is that it cannot use what we would call a state broadcaster because there isn't one. Mm-hmm. The strange thing about the BBC is that because it's so old, it has problems. It's got a lot of problems regarding its own identity and also how it survives, as well as some cultural issues, because it hasn't really moved or changed since it was set up. And that means that it's a very difficult institution to deal with, to work for. I'll give you an example. Regularly, we see in the news, on the BBC, ironically, issues relating to women being paid less than men. We have presenters who've been paid literally thousands of pounds less than their male counterparts, even though they do the same job and they do the same thing. And first of all, it's interesting the way the BBC report this news, because the BBC say, there was a court case today regarding the BBC. So it doesn't describe itself as it. It's completely impartial, It doesn't describe itself, as its own identity. You wouldn't hear a news story saying, we have discovered a problem. They seem to be a little bit strange with this kind of thing. They also refer to the Queen as Britain's monarch, which again is a way of maybe denying the opportunity to acknowledge that they are British and have a British identity. This kind of stuff is not new. This is all the old stuff that the BBC has been carrying for some years. Regarding TV programs, the BBC doesn't actually make TV programs anymore. It rents out its programs to third parties, and they make them for the BBC. So in the old days, there was a BBC TV Centre, and as children, we used to write to it to get photographs of our favourite presenters. The BBC TV Centre in Wood Lane, London, but that's all gone now. The BBC is actually in Manchester. As far as I know, it doesn't have any TV studios for making programs, but it does actually have, obviously, its news studios. The radio from the BBC is still based all around the country. There's loads of regional programs. And there's also, how can I say, the main national networks, which are still based in London. The BBC World Service broadcasts around the world. It was looked after by the government. It was a government department belonging to the Foreign Office, but that is no longer the case. I think the government wanted rid of it. So it gets funded the same as the BBC is. What else can I tell you about the BBC? Well, I can tell you that it's always very short of cash, and it's funded by the license payer. So in this country, if you have a TV, you must have a TV license. If you use BBC iPlayer, you must have a TV license. And what's really strange is even during COVID, these little grey vans with transmitters on the top were flying around here. They look a little bit like those Google vans, if you remember them. And usually you receive a letter in advance telling you that the TV License Detection Agency will be visiting your street. And so if you don't have a TV license, you should get one. They obviously have a list of all addresses which have a TV license and the ones which don't. A TV license costs just under £200 a year, and there's currently a big debate about whether old people should be given the TV license free, or at least in some kind of reduced capacity. The government's tried a few times to push through legislation to remove any benefits for older people. And that's currently a hot potato in UK culture. I mean, the whole issue of paying for the BBC via a license wouldn't be quite so bad if you could opt out. For example, if you could have a TV and you can say, okay, I have a TV, but I don't want to watch the BBC. If that were possible, that probably would be a very nice way to be. But that doesn't exist right now. If you have a TV, you have to have a TV license. There was one man who went to court once, I remember, some years ago, who showed them physically that his TV could not get any BBC channels. And he won. He didn't have to pay the license fee. But those cases are very rare. And if you have any BBC app, I think it's the iPlayer app particularly, you should have a license. If you don't have, I don't think anything happens. I mean, the app seems to be used by people all over the world who presumably don't have a license for it. So anyway, I did some work for the BBC back in the 1980s, and it was very strange. The boss that I was working for was a little old lady who looked like she had been working there since the 1940s. And I was doing some work on radio. And I remember this lady telling me, well, remember, always bring a clean shirt with you and clean underwear. Now, I'm not quite sure why she was wanting me to bring a clean shirt and clean underwear. I was always a bit puzzled by that, especially for radio. But anyway, obviously that's the way she had been taught. But yeah, these kind of people are slowly disappearing now, thankfully. And it is beginning to modernize a little bit. But they really have a long way to go. And I think they know that. There's also been allegations of impropriety, especially around Princess Diana and reporting. That made headline news, I think, a few months ago. Another strange thing about radio and television here is ITV, which is the BBC's competitor, it pays for itself through advertising. But the BBC, the Supreme Governor of the BBC, the Supreme Governor, even though it's not a state broadcaster anymore, is the Queen. And even the Queen doesn't always broadcast on it. And the strange thing is, if you say anything bad on the radio or TV about the Queen, you will just automatically lose your job because she's the boss. And you don't say bad things about the boss. And I'm still quite surprised sometimes. Oh, it's a very loud truck outside, isn't it? Don't know what that was. Sorry. Yeah, I'm still quite surprised sometimes when I hear of radio presenters being fired because they made a joke about the Queen. The last one was someone who made reference to the Queen having sex. I think it was last Christmas or the Christmas before, and they were just told to leave immediately. I suppose out of respect for her, we all have to behave, but it seems a bit extreme in these days. Anyway, the BBC was started in the 1920s with BBC Radio. I think the BBC World Service came later, allowing British people around the world to hear it on shortwave. Now it's digital. The BBC World Service provides a wonderful service. If you don't know it, do try to catch it. You can stream it online because it has programs from all around the world. Also in different languages, so they could be broadcasting in a language near you. They even do BBC Persian on television, which is really strange for me. I didn't think the BBC would have any interest in that kind of thing, but it's trying to be diverse. It must be costing a lot of money to do things like that, but I don't know. Anyway, the other thing about the BBC was I think that it needs to be completely modernized. A few months ago, when Martin Bashir was, I'm not sure if he was arrested or if he was simply interviewed, but anyway, it came to light that he had not handled the Diana interview in the best possible way. And as a direct result of that, the government insisted that the BBC be completely changed and overhauled. So they did a review as to what they could change, but it needs to be completely looked at, I think, with a separate view, perhaps from people who don't work there. And anyway, it's kind of no longer relevant, I suppose. We don't need a broadcaster which broadcasts all around the world because we can listen to local stories on the internet. The other thing about it is just the fact that it doesn't ever seem to progress. Now, looking at the BBC website, I like it, but it's rather strange in the way it presents things. And I think it's trying to have a modern image, but it kind of makes things worse. A few of the headlines that I've seen over the last year on the BBC, one was, "My vagina is trying to kill me." I mean, that kind of stuff is ridiculous. And other headlines have included half-truths about maybe sensational stories. Also, I'm questioning these days the way stories are written. They seem to be written in an overly complex way. And some of them clearly are written by non-natives as well. So I guess in the spirit of diversity, and like everyone else trying to save money, the BBC is employing people perhaps to do more than one job, maybe from For example, the BBC Polish department, they ask them to work in the English department, or maybe something like that anyway. Finally, the other thing about the BBC I can tell you is, as a media company, it has tried several times to streamline what it does. I remember the time it tried to move all radio news and television news together, not realizing that TV news and radio news were two very different things. It sounds like they should be the same, doesn't it? But actually they have all their own reporters, and the radio presenters and the industry were very upset that the BBC were trying to mix the two mediums. I think I have to say media there because it's plural. Anyway, I'm sorry if I've given you a kind of bad story about the BBC, but it clearly is a relic. It no longer belongs in our society in the way that it is my view. And I really hope it learns to change and move on and perhaps deal with the issues it has. So I hope that this has been enlightening for you. If you ever thought of the BBC as a kind of like state media broadcaster, which might have some kind of it might be some kind of tool for the government, then it absolutely isn't. In fact, the BBC and the government have a very bad relationship, as you probably can see from some of the headlines about the government that it produces. That's all from me for today. I hope you found this helpful, and let's talk again very, very soon. Remember to catch me on social media, on YouTube, which is probably where you heard this, Facebook, my website, and of course on my WhatsApp group as well. Thank you very much, and I'll see you all again very, very soon. Bye-bye.